Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to Star Trek Prodigy, a ReBingeIt podcast. My name is James.
And my name is Kim, and we're watching Star Trek Prodigy and talking about it here on the Talk Through Media network of podcasts. Hit it! Welcome back to the podcast, or I should say, welcome back to take 2 of the podcast. Today we are on Season 1, Episode 5, Terror Firma. This episode began streaming on Paramount Plus Thursday, November 18th, 2021, which is yesterday as we record. Just a reminder, this is the last episode of Prodigy until January, so be sure and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice so that you get the podcast automatically when we come back in January.
Indeed.
Well, let's get down to the episode.
Absolutely.
Just like before, we're going to do a walkthrough to discuss what we think about today's plot, and then we'll read out our feedback, and of course we'll play a clip from our kid correspondent, Mahi. Last week, she was very excited by the weird planet, so I wonder what she's going to talk about this week.
Indeed.
So here we go.
Okay, so should I gush about how much I really like the opening credits?
Are we going to do that every week?
I think so. It's definitely worth it.
Then you might as well.
Okay.
Get everybody used to it.
Love the opening credits. It's so good.
Yeah, the few notes of the old-time Star Trek theme right at the end are really cool.
Agreed.
Well, we open this episode right back where we left off last episode. We're all standing around looking at Gwen. Zero determines that Gwen has broken her leg, and Dal is blaming her for stealing their ship and stranding them. Rock Talk can't help but be positive, pointing out that Gwen saved Murph, which she did.
Yeah.
In other good news, Janeway calls on the comms of the shuttle to say the Protostar survived the crash, so that's good.
So it appears the 3D printer managed to finish that bit of the shuttle, and it wasn't broken in the crash.
Yeah, it only had half of a door, or one side that had a door, but somehow it had the full view screen.
Yeah, and rock smashed through the side of it, so it was not in very good shape.
Yeah, well, she got out, just broke a leg. And Murph seemed fine.
Well, that's the most important bit.
Well, the ship is 10 kilometers away from their location, and Janeway says the Vines are trying to turn the ship into lunch. She'll hold them off as long as she can, but they need to get there fast. Dal tries to get them into their fancy dune buggy, but the planet decides instead to just swallow the vehicle right in front of them. Dal is highly annoyed.
Yeah, he's having one of those days.
Yeah, well, they all are.
I just hope they can replicate another one of those, because that was such a cool vehicle.
Yeah, James, the augmented sailor, will be very upset if we never see that car again.
Yeah. Well, they have a pretty good replicator.
It's true. Or this whole thing was one giant hallucination, and everything is really fine.
Ah, yeah, they're actually slowly being digested by the planet.
Maybe.
Wow, that'll be a real bummer for the start to the next season.
That would be a bummer, yeah. Oh, they've all been eaten.
The end. Well, Dal and the others seem quite content to let Gwen find her own way to the ship, but Rock Talk actually puts her hand out to help. Gwen is a bit jerky and rebuffs the aide, saying she can look after herself, because she's obviously super tough.
Yeah.
And she does the blue glowy thing, and now her sword, the pattern thing on her arm, turns into a leg brace. That's got to be programmable matter. It seems very useful. I know it's not Star Trek, but I think I probably would have left her.
Yeah, and they don't even know the worst thing that she's done yet. They don't know that she called her dad and said, come and pick me up.
Yeah, she hasn't let that on.
But of course, Rock Talk has to be the nice one and offers to help.
Yeah.
It's also kind of cute when Rock Talk sees how she can use that tattoo sword weird thingy.
Yeah.
She kind of gasps, and that makes Gwen smile. So there's something going on there. She's starting to see that she should appreciate Rock Talk.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, now they have to traverse the distance to the ship, which is beyond some hills, and it's getting dark and cold. Rock Talk wants to give the planet a name as they're walking, and she suggests that they name it Larry. Jacob wants to call it Murder Planet, which seems much more appropriate. Zero points out that it's not technically a planet, but a life form, and figures that they can just ask the life form its name telepathically. But it seems that the only thing on the life form's mind is that it wants to eat them. It's not interested in having a chat.
That was very cute. Maybe I'll ask its name. No, it just wants to eat us.
Yep, nope. Jankum spends a lot of time here pointing out that he's wearing a spacesuit. I mean, remember that for later. Well, as they're walking, it seems like the trees are whispering.
Yes.
Which is very strange, especially since this is really the only time that we kind of focus on it.
Yeah.
Zero determines that they must have gotten turned around because the hills are no longer visible in front of them. And so he changes direction. And as he does that, we see the creepy vines kind of slithering all around in the background. I do like how at this point, everybody is wearing their comm badge. Well, everybody except for Gwen.
Well, I think they might have learned the value of wearing it at this point.
Maybe, except Dal doesn't answer Janeway on his comm badge. He answers her on the shuttle.
Yeah. It was a better way for them to show Janeway's face, I think.
Oh, that's true.
I would like to ask the question of why the direction would change if they're following a tracker.
Yeah. It's actually possible that while the planet is terraforming, the ship is moving.
That's what I was wondering. In which case, why didn't the planet just bury the ship?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of inconsistencies around that. Why did it just so easily eat that little car, but...
Didn't eat them.
It didn't eat them, but also the vines would go up the ship, and then they wouldn't be on the ship, and then they'd go up the ship again. I did start to wonder later in this episode if maybe the planet or the life form was reacting differently to them over time.
Oh.
So maybe it was doing something on purpose. I know that Zero tried to talk to the creature and wasn't getting anything back from it, so maybe I'm overthinking. But yeah, I didn't get that either, so I was trying to come up with an explanation. I think it's also entirely possible that Zero was hallucinating, because that seems to be quite a common thing.
Yeah. Right. Interesting. Oh, that's a good one. Back on the ship, Janeway manages to stop the vines getting on board by closing the back door.
She seems awfully gleeful for a hologram when she chops the vines off and they squeal in pain. Yes. She's got like this little hee look on her face.
I win. But main power is offline and they only have 80% of reserves left.
It's funny in this scene when the hologram is saying to herself or to itself, what would the real Janeway do? Think. I just thought that was very strange that the hologram is telling itself to think.
It's clearly a very advanced hologram. It's like the Doctor from Voyager.
Maybe it has some kind of an algorithm of different things to say instead of processing or wait. It says, think.
That's a good one. Outside the ship, we see the vines are now wrapping around the nacelles and are trying to pull it down. She figures out how to get them off the ship using non-essential systems and accesses the ship's photonic descrubbers and orders full disinfection mode. That's a very Janeway move. She's basically figured out that using the ship's windshield washer function, she can clear off all the vines.
I did like those little scrubbers. That was pretty cool. She also seemed really happy about that, too.
Yeah, she's having fun. She's enjoying this quite clearly.
Yeah, she's definitely enjoying herself.
Yeah. She now discovers that something else is using a lot of power. The gravimetric Protostar containment, and asks, why don't I have a record of this system? And orders the computer to shut it down. The computer informs her that it requires command-level authorization to do so. Okay, so what is this system and how does she not know about it?
And also, why, if the computer tells you that it's using power to contain a protostar, why would you say shut it down?
Yeah, as somebody with a science background, surely that one should have raised some red flags of, hey, that sounds dangerous.
Yes, like maybe you could ask the question, gee, computer, what would happen if we shut that down? Nope, shut it down.
Yes. Well, she's taking a leaf out of Dal's book of eject everything that's not bolted down.
Well, and Dal does the exact same thing later when he hears about this. He's like, shut that down.
Yeah. So she doesn't know about it.
Right.
Is this a secret from the ship? Who installed it? Was it installed by somebody else?
Oh, aftermarket.
Was this something the diviner put on the ship?
I think that's a great question, but it doesn't look like it was just something that was added on when it gets deployed later, because the ship actually changes. The scene closes with an outside shot of the ship, and now there are no vines. This is the thing that drove me crazy in both of these episodes. Vines, no vines, vines, no vines. It just feels really shaky to me, or maybe I'm imagining it. I don't know. But meanwhile, the crew are walking around in circles, and Rock Talk asks, are we there yet? Just like a little kid. And they've not made it any closer to the ship. Zero says, oh, the ship is 10 kilometers away, which is where they started. But this seems to be because the planet is terraforming around them and fooling them. Gwen shows that she's the smart one here as she explains the meaning of terraforming.
Yes, something for the younger viewers.
Right. They're all starting to get a little bit freaked out as the vines are slithering all around them, and it's dark. Dal holds up Zero, using them as a flashlight. And there's a funny line from Zero here who says, I don't know how I feel about this, but I'm happy to help.
He's a very effective flashlight.
Yeah, you and I both laughed out loud at that. Dal asks a really good question at this point. If it can make our dreams come true, what about our nightmares?
Yeah, exactly. And in response to this, the planet creates a giant watcher, which is one of those spider-like robots from the mining asteroid. They try using their phasers on it, as it's huge, but it has no apparent effect against it.
This is a really cool scene. We paused it here when we were watching it, and they're all bathed in this red light from the Watcher. I was thinking when I saw this that this particular image is kind of familiar on the show. This one eyed, round, robotic-like creature. I mean, it looks a little bit like Zero, but also it looks like the Protostar's secret engine. So it seems like we've seen this kind of image multiple times.
Well, they made one 3D model of it, and they're reusing it in multiple places.
Oh, maybe.
Gwyn has the smart idea of throwing a burning branch at the vine-based Watcher, which immediately catches fire and starts backing away. Jankum says, "Great idea, Gwyn." Then, "Terrible idea, Gwyn," as all the trees around them are now on fire.
Why was Jankum just the best in this episode? He had all the funniest lines.
Yes.
Oh, I laughed at that. It was great.
Oh, it was pretty funny. They run to escape and reach a steep cliff. Gwyn leads the way by jumping off and sliding down. They all follow her. At the bottom, amazingly, no one has any broken limbs.
Yeah, except for Gwyn.
Well, any more broken limbs. That did not look very safe.
No.
Dal looks up at the burning trees and agrees with Jankum that Murder Planet is a pretty good name for the place.
Yeah, beats Larry.
Oh, Larry would have been a good planet. Larry's world.
Well, especially since it's a life form and not a planet.
Yeah.
Larry actually would have been a good name.
Exactly. Larry the Murder Planet. The others thank Gwyn for getting them out of there, and Dal, correctly I'll say, points out that if it wasn't for her, they'd still have the ship.
Well, maybe. I mean, I feel like the ship was going to get attacked either way. I'm not sure it's Gwyn's fault that the ship got attacked by the vines.
True. Yeah, I might concede that point.
And they did lock her up. Maybe they should have taken her with and not left her behind.
Oh, yeah.
Or they could have left somebody to watch her.
They did. That was Murph's job.
Yeah, I don't think leaving the cat to watch over things is a good idea. Speaking from personal experience.
And then it starts raining, and the rain sizzles when it hits things.
Yeah, it really just keeps getting better and better here.
Zero says, "Oh my, acid rain, a novel means for the planet's digestion."
Zero, master of the understatement.
Yes. Dal says they better find cover, and Rocktalk points at a crashed Klingon ship nearby, which looks like a warbird. For the record, this is now the second ship that she's found.
True, she is the one that found the Protostar.
Yeah.
Well, inside the ship, Jankum is cooking some Klingon rations, and they're talking about their hallucinations. Zero tells the others that Dal wanted to see his parents. He wasn't admitting to it himself. And Jankum has lost his spacesuit, I see. In fact, I don't think we ever see it again from here. It's just somehow magically disappeared. Well, after Zero kind of outed what his hallucination was, Dal makes an excuse that he's not hungry, and he leaves them, kind of dropping his bowl on the ground.
Which looked like a bowl of gack.
It did, but it did not look like fresh ones because they weren't moving.
Yeah, they're not very good if they're not moving.
No. Well, Dal has now found a Klingon sword, and Gwyn tells him it's a mek'leth.
It's not a bad weapon. It just does not have the honor of a bat'lath.
I think this is the one that Worf prefers, though.
Really?
Yeah, I believe that we've heard him say that before.
Ah. Which is interesting because he's a master of the bat'lath.
Well, Dal pretends like he doesn't care about seeing his parents. I mean, he's desperately trying to be
Yes.
cool. He tells Gwyn that he'd just like to know what he is because he really doesn't know what his species is.
That bit did sound real.
Yes, and Gwyn tells him that she also wants something that she may never get. She doesn't say it, but based on what happened at the end of last week's episode, I'm guessing she wants some hugs from Dad, but she's never going to get
Yeah,
that.
it's definitely dad hugs.
Yeah. She tells Dal that that brain-controlled sword thing that she has was the only thing that her father's ever given her. They have a pleasant little bonding moment here as Dal laughs at her for jumping out of a starship in an unfinished shuttle. And then while they're looking up at the stars, they realize they can use them to navigate to the Protostar, and they run to tell the others.
You'd think, like, the tracking device, which pointed the direction of where the ship was, they'd be able to use that. But no, it's the stars.
Yeah.
A little bit of a plot hole there, I feel.
Yeah. Well, again, unless they are all hallucinating, but they could hallucinate the stars too, so I don't know how any of this would ever work.
The planet should just eat them. Eat them and get it over with. Oh, maybe it likes to play with its food.
I don't know. I think it's starting to like them.
Oh, okay.
Or it's tasted all of them and really only enjoyed Gwyn. Didn't think too much of eating the rock.
Yeah, Rock Talk was a bit chewy.
Yeah. While we're hanging out on the Klingon ship, we have to ask, why does Gwyn know about Klingons being in the Delta Quadrant? I think we understand why Pog would know.
Yeah.
But why does Gwyn know?
I assume that it would because her father taught her. I mean, he's taught her about the Protostar, and her father knows about the Federation. So it's a fair guess he knows about the Klingons.
Yeah, I'm suspicious.
Did we get confirmation that she controls the programmable matter with her mind?
Dal asks if she controls it with her mind, but she doesn't really answer. She just said, this is the only thing that my dad ever gave me. So she kind of confirms it by not denying it.
Okay. Overhead, Darth Dreadnought and Emperor Diviner are in their weirdly shaped spaceship. He orders Dreadnought to put the ship into orbit and beam them down at once.
It's like a giant dreidel.
It is an odd shape.
Yeah.
I was thinking a D&D dice.
Oh, yeah.
The crew is marching along and walk right into Dreadnought. Jankum thinks it's another hallucination at first, but the very real Dreadnought shoots the Klingon sword out of Jankum's hand.
This is where I noticed that Jankum gave up on that spacesuit that he was so proud of earlier in the episode, and he traded it in for that Klingon sword.
He couldn't carry both at the same time. Everyone is shocked to learn that Gwyn knew Dreadnought and her father were coming to pick her up. He levels his gun at the fugitives and tells Gwyn to step aside, but she stands in front of them with her arms out, trying to protect them.
I don't know, those skinny arms of hers. She wasn't exactly protecting anyone. He could have just shot around her.
Yeah, how bad a shot is he?
Yeah.
He shoots her sword leg brace, causing her to collapse, and she tells the others to run. He targets Dal and is about to shoot, but a vine pulls him down right before he gets the shot off.
Again, was the planet/life form protecting them at this point?
Yeah.
I found that very suspicious because it could have pulled him down any time, but it waited until he was about to shoot Dal.
That's a good point. It could be just that as a robot metallic creature, it prefers the taste. A little bit of mineral rather than biological.
It prefers the taste of Dreadnought, or it wants Dal alive because it doesn't like to eat things that are dead.
Oh. Dreadnought cuts his way out of the vines and is now in full robot spider mode searching for them. The friends now reenact the hobbits escaping from the Shire scene from Lord of the Rings, with the four companions hiding under tree roots. He can't find them and scuttles away.
I thought the exact same thing about this scene. I was like, ooh, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, exactly, where the Wraith is searching for them.
Man, the way he scuttles away is so creepy. It's like a scorpion. I mean, the sound and everything.
Yeah, they've done a great job with that villain. He has a real on-screen presence when they show him. Very well done.
Oh, that dude is scary.
I'm also impressed that with all the other franchises they're bringing into the show, that they've now managed to get Lord of the Rings into the series.
We do get one more reference later, which I took note of. Maybe you didn't.
I did not.
Okay.
They continue the walk to the ship, and Rock and Zero ask about Gwyn, saying she tried to save them. But Dal is like, forget it. This is all her fault anyway.
He's so whiny. Dawn seems to be breaking now, and Gwyn is trying to put her sword back together as the vines are attacking her again. She really hasn't got up off of the ground since Dreadnought shot her.
Yeah, this is pretty bad.
The Diviner now beams down to the planet wearing his impressive armored suit, right in front of the Protostar, and he turns towards it saying, "Salvation!" And Gwyn is close enough to see all of this.
The vines are really starting to envelop her now.
Yeah, she's really fighting to kind of get her sword back together and get through the vines. And she's like calling out to her dad.
This is such an impressive scene here. I really liked how they staged it with the ship in the background and the Diviner standing there. And it looked really good.
I was confused by why he would be beaming down now and not when Dreadnought came down, because earlier he says, beam us immediately to the planet or whatever he says. But somehow they didn't come down at the same time and he beams to a slightly different location.
Well, I have an answer for this. He was sending Dreadnought down to make sure it was safe. So if Dreadnought got destroyed, chewed up, eaten, whatever.
Oh, I see. Okay.
He could sit there and go, yeah, I'm not beaming down.
It's like he's using him to taste his food.
Yeah, exactly. Dreadnought is his red shirt.
I got it. This is the part where when they showed the Diviner's face up close and you couldn't see quite the whole face, but when you could see most of his face, he looked like Gollum when he was looking at that ship and he was like, my precious Protostar.
Wow, you're right.
That was great.
I don't have a note of him saying, my precious Protostar, though.
He was thinking it. You could see it on his face. Well, Gwyn is really losing the battle against the vines here, and she's calling out to her dad for help.
Not looking good.
He kind of starts walking toward her, and he's like, oh, my progeny. But then he becomes more worried about the Protostar that's being pulled down by the vines. He ignores Gwen's plea, and he just says, I'm sorry, and he heads to the ship.
Wow.
Bad move, Dad. Bad move.
Cold. On the ship, Janeway prepares for immediate departure and opens the back door, then transfers herself to the hangar. The sun is behind whoever is walking up the ramp. And they try to trick us here. They make it seem like it's the Diviner, because in the last scene when they cut, he was about to walk up the ramp. But it's really Dal and the others. Hologram Janeway does seem pretty happy to see them. Meanwhile, The diviner, who thinks he's walking onto the ship, suddenly sees it's just vines that are now trying to overpower him, and he starts shouting, "This is not real! It's not real!" Back on the real ship, Janeway asks, "Where's Gwyn?"
And Gwen has now been completely covered by the vines, and she seems to have given up.
Yeah.
But she looks up and sees the Protostar above her as Dal comes down on a cable to rescue her. I don't understand why they couldn't beam her up. Do we not have transporters on this ship? I mean, the other ship had a transporter.
Look, it's Star Trek. Sometimes you use the transporters, sometimes you have to fly down in a shuttle or hang out on a cable.
And in the same way, she didn't have to use the blue lights in her head to use that sword again.
We'll gloss over that.
Sometimes she does, and sometimes she doesn't.
More great use of music during this rescue.
Yeah, it's very dramatic.
They really have the music just nailed down in this show.
Gwen is pretty shocked that they came back to rescue her, but nobody watching it was shocked.
They're becoming Starfleet. They're becoming a crew.
Yeah, absolutely.
They all work together to do that.
Yeah. And we cut to the ship leaving the planet as the diviner is fighting off the vines.
Yeah.
He even bites them, which was pretty funny.
That was a nice touch.
And then he jumps to freedom, finding Dreadnought, who says, "Your progeny betrayed us."
So, what's Dreadnought actually been doing all this time? While his boss was being attacked by vines?
Glowering. I imagine he was just standing there watching, thinking, vines can have him.
You know, if the vines eat him, I can have the ship.
Yeah, exactly. I can get out of here. I can stop chasing that stupid girl.
Yeah.
Now in the Protostar, they're going into warp to get away. Gwen is sitting in the captain's chair pouting about how her dad picked the ship over her.
Bummer.
But somehow he didn't end up with either one, which is funny.
Yes. Well, some of that comes down to the fact that he's still relatively young for a diviner and can still have more kids or clones.
I don't know, it seems short-sighted to leave her behind if there really are only 2 left of the race.
So I think she's just a clone.
Yeah, I guess that's possible.
Dal tells Gwyn, "You're with us now. He can't hurt you anymore." But maybe he can, because the diviner's ship has locked onto their warp signature and is closing fast. Outside, we see the diviner's ship is huge in comparison with the Protostar.
Yeah, and it looks familiar too, especially when it's got those couple of scenes where it's kind of bathed in red light. It really reminds me of that Romulan ship from the Kelvin universe.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when it's trying to kind of eat the Protostar when it gets really close to it.
And they're getting sucked in by a tractor beam when Zero finally figures out Protostar isn't just the name of the ship, it's the secret engine. Rocktalk gets very excited about having a baby star on board.
Baby star!
She's adorable.
She is.
The diviner hails them, and while he's happy to see Gwyn is still alive...
Is he?
No thanks to him.
Yeah, maybe.
He immediately goes into threat mode and says, "If you want to save your friends, surrender the ship." He says he knows she'll do the right thing. Gwyn does decide to do the right thing and tells the computer to engage Protostar. This is awesome. They do this fast zoom out at this point, and you see Murph and Rocktalk on consoles at the sides, and then Gwyn in the captain's chair, and Dal and Janeway flanking her, both looking very serious.
Yeah, Janeway with their hands behind her back.
Yes.
Yeah, that was really cool.
I can't decide whether it's Gwyn or Janeway is the steely-eyed missile woman in this scene.
What's a steely-eyed missile woman?
It was a NASA term that they would give to astronauts who could solve problems at the drop of a hat.
Oh, like under pressure.
Yes, exactly.
I see.
On the outside of the ship, we see the warp nacelles now fold down underneath the ship, and the new engine deploys from the back. And we get a countdown. 3, 2, Gwyn says, "You made your choice, Father. Now I've made mine." Engaged. And they're gone.
On the diviner's ship, we see the Protostar disappear in front of them. That was very dramatic. I really like that.
Yes.
And Dreadnought says they're no longer on our maps. And poor diviner, he says, she's gone. The end.
What a fantastic ending. The whole countdown. Perfect.
It seemed a little slow, though, the countdown. It seemed like the 3, 2, 1. It took like 5 minutes. But they needed to play it up for the drama. They needed to get a little music in there. They needed to get the reaction from the diviner. They needed to show everybody's face.
Oh, yeah.
They needed Rocktalk to say, something's happening. That was great.
A perfect way to wrap up this break in the show.
All right, well, we've reached the end of the episode, so did anything stand out for you in this episode?
Oh, wow, there's a lot of great stuff in this episode. Now we have another method of Star Trek propulsion, proto-warp.
Proto-warp, yeah. I kept thinking about the Deep Space Nine episode, Playing God, where they had the proto-universe and they just threw it out the window and left it behind in the Gamma Quadrant.
So what's your plan? We fly back through the wormhole and throw it out the window. Good job.
Yeah, that was funny. Well, one thing that really stood out for me in this episode was Jankum Pog.
Yes.
I mean, I think I thought from the beginning Jankum Pog would be the character I did not like.
Yeah.
But I think he's my favorite character. I mean, obviously next to Janeway, because nobody can beat Janeway.
Well, no.
But he's so funny, and I just like the way he always kind of has the same exact reaction. Like if he's mad, he kind of says it the same way. If he's happy, he kind of says it the same way.
Yeah.
And there's something about that is just really so funny. Every single thing he said in this episode, I was like, oh my gosh, he's so hilarious.
And when he was bragging about having the spacesuit and being warm,
Yeah.
it seemed that Murph could actually understand him because Murph blew a raspberry at him.
Yes. And there was another time where it seemed like Murph understood what was going on. So yeah, there's still something going on with that character. Hopefully we'll get a little bit more out of that at some point in the future.
Yeah, I have a theory that Murph is actually like Nibbler from Futurama.
Oh, that would not fit.
No, it probably wouldn't fit, but it would be pretty funny.
No. I really liked in this episode, I think the two things that really stood out for me were the two things that we've been waiting for and the two things that we knew needed to happen. The secret engine, of course, that we needed to know what that was. And I would have been really surprised if we went into this hiatus without seeing it in some fashion.
Yeah, true.
And then the other thing was we needed Gwen to realize her father loved the ship more than her.
Yeah.
She needed a reason to want to join this crew, and the crew needed a reason to believe her.
Right.
So even though I would say it was a relatively simplistic thing that occurred, to make it happen, we needed it here. And so that definitely stood out for me.
I don't know if simplistic is completely fair because she's obviously has been striving to please her father and be a perfect daughter.
Yeah.
And in this instant, she was basically exposed to the fact that she was disposable, along with everyone else. It basically shakes the foundation of her entire worldview.
I guess I don't mean that the reason was simplistic. I meant that the turn of the story was relatively simplistic.
Okay.
It wasn't an overly complicated storyline to get her to this point.
Yeah.
She got a very clear view that she was second choice. And in fact, didn't seem to matter at all once he got his eyes on that ship.
Right.
This does kind of lead into maybe a gripe that I have about these two episodes, which is it seemed a little bit like a continuity error that in that point where he does see the ship, and it's not really the ship, he's seeing a hallucination of these lines. Yeah. Why would Gwen see it? I get why they all saw the Watcher thing, because that was all something that they had shared together. And certainly all of the people who were the prisoners there were scared of that. And that made some sense to me. But why would she see the ship?
Okay, I have an answer for this.
Oh, okay.
The planet can clearly, and the Watcher scene confirmed this, give group hallucinations. Now, if it didn't give her and her father the same hallucination of the ship being there, then there's always the risk of Gwyn shouting to her father, it's not really the ship. It's not really there. It's the planet. And thus ruin the planet's plan of eating the diviner.
Okay. I'll accept that. That's a pretty good answer for some headcanon.
Thank you.
It does make me question, though. It really started to feel like the life form planet, whatever this thing was, was swaying towards going after the bad guys, and I would put Gwen kind of in that category because it just seemed to stop paying attention to the rest of the crew. And it even gave up trying to pull down the Protostar. Like we saw that the Klingon ship never made it off the planet.
And it didn't eat it.
Right. And somehow the Protostar got off and it allowed those kids, to get to that ship. So I wonder if something happened there that it started eventually to try to help them. I mean, it wasn't super clear, but to me that otherwise it's a little bit of a continuity error again, because I would think that the things would just keep trying to eat them, and it would have by then.
I have an idea for this.
Okay. More headcanon.
Yes.
Okay.
The planet has a cost-benefit analysis of the amount of effort that it spends and energy it spends trying to eat something versus letting it go because it's too much effort.
And the kids had been fighting it too much?
Yes.
Had started it on fire. Maybe the fire scared it off.
Yeah. The whole thing with cheetahs of if they can't catch their prey within 100 yards or whatever, they give up because the amount of energy they expend would be too much. And I look at the planet maybe doing that.
Maybe. I just think about this. Somehow the bird of prey couldn't get off the planet, but Janeway managed to free the Protostar using those windshield wipers.
Well, okay.
I don't know.
I have an answer for that too.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
You cannot appeal or affect the emotions of the hologram. The Klingons are a very emotional people, so the visions, hallucinations, mirages could be a lot more effective on the Klingons. They were attacking Janeway purely technically.
Yeah,
whereas the Klingons, they could get in their head, they could show them visions of Kahless.
Well, technically, Janeway didn't exist to them.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, it wasn't something that they could eat or it could eat. Yeah. Wow. Okay. I like the way you overanalyze stuff.
Thank you. That, listeners, is pretty much entirely what ReBinge Deep Space Nine is like.
That's true. There is one thing I don't think you can talk your way out of, though.
Okay, go.
If we go back to the previous episode, the first part of this two-parter.
Yeah.
There was the one shot where Janeway is looking at, I don't know if she was looking at other parts of the ship or just the nacelles.
Yeah, she was looking at the layout of the ship, yeah.
And the vines were inside.
Yeah, she said it had penetrated the command and control systems.
And then they weren't. So I still contend there's a continuity problem with these vines.
I have no memory of any of that happening.
Oh, yeah, that's convenient. Okay.
That's a really good point, actually.
I just think they needed to be more careful with that. I appreciated every other thing about this story and enjoyed everything about it, but you can't be so careless with that stuff unless you've got some kind of an explanation for it.
Well, and it's a really easy one to get out of. You just need to have the hologram Janeway say something like emergency purge protocol.
Yes, or that none of those vines could survive on their own once they got chopped off from the main, vine or whatever. They could have said something about that or showed that. If they had just showed that one time, then I would believe it. But there needed to, and maybe something got cut, but exactly, the purge is what was missing. And that would have just sort of made this whole thing come together for me. But you know how sometimes something will just bother you and nobody else seems to notice it? I mean, I've been reading tons of stuff online of other people talking about this episode, and this doesn't seem to bother anybody else. So, I mean, maybe it just got in my head, but I couldn't get past it.
Oh, okay. We'll just make a note of that. That's just Chem.
That's just Chem. All right. Well, let's move on. Let's get out of this section.
Okay.
And move to character development. What did we learn in this episode?
Well, I think Murph clearly has some kind of understanding of language.
Definitely something going on with Murph, I agree. A couple of hints of that happening.
It could have low-level telepathic abilities and was sensing Rock's discomfort at Jankum being rather unsympathetic and bragging about his spacesuit.
Maybe. I mean, speaking of Jankum, I don't know what happened in this episode with Jankum, but I loved everything he said. When Dreadnought appeared and he's like, "Murder Planet gets us again. Which one of you guys thought up this idiot?" Oh man, I laughed so hard.
Yeah.
Somehow he's always upbeat, but not optimistic.
I know, right? I wonder if that comes down to the skill of the voice actor.
Maybe. Yeah, Jason Mantzoukas, very, very good.
Yeah. Okay, maybe I'm being too harsh on Gwyn here, but I feel Gwyn as a character is one of those people who's quite happy to go along with her father being an awful jerk and keeping all these prisoners and just being a terrible person until it affects her. And all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, he's a bad guy. And she was quite happy to allow that to continue and not make a moral choice to not help him until it affected her.
That's really sad when you look at it that way. Yeah, I see what you're saying. She certainly had opportunities to see that children were being exploited on this asteroid by her father, regardless of whether or not maybe they had done something wrong. Did she not pay any attention to the fact that they're children? It seems like the first time she even thought about it was when the cat turned up. By the way, #SaveVacation. We still haven't done that. I'm still upset about that. What is going on with that cat?
That is really concerning.
If we do not save that cat, I will riot.
I believe that, yes.
Yeah.
So rather than her coming to a moral realization that this is inherently wrong and she shouldn't do it, it came down to, now it affects me.
Oh, my dad's a jerk. I don't like him. Yeah, no, okay, yes.
I know it's a very negative way of looking at it, but it just sort of popped into my head.
I think you can look at it like a level of maturity as well. I mean, I believe we're supposed to think she is pretty young.
Yeah.
So, this can just be a little bit of a coming of age kind of realization for her that, gosh, maybe my father isn't telling me the truth all the time.
That, I would say, is a much better one.
Yeah.
That's a really good way to look at it, that maybe she's reached a level of emotional maturity that she can look at the whole picture and go, wow, he really doesn't care about anyone. I need to make decisions about my own life and my own moral compass.
Exactly.
Okay, I'll take that as a much better redemption arc for Gwyn.
Okay, cool.
And most importantly, with Gwyn, they now get a competent captain.
Yeah, she seems to know actually how to fly the ship.
Yeah, she'll probably listen to Janeway's briefings.
She probably will. It'll be her and Rock Talk paying attention, getting A's on the test.
Yes.
Well, let's move away from character development and let's talk about how this works as a kid's show. And let's give a listen to what Mahi has to say about this episode. This is Mahi, our 6-year-old correspondent.
I thought that the episode was great. Del Rey and Gwen did not argue, but instead they worked together as a team, and the away team was able to escape from the weird planet.
Did you think the team would save Gwen?
Yes, I knew that the team would save Gwen because the team members had gotten along with Gwen and they liked her. She had saved Mur's life and also fought against the gigantic Watcher.
What was the best part about today's episode?
I liked the part where Gwen and Del Rey figured out that they could follow the stars to guide their way to the spaceship. Now I know how ancient explorers used the stars to discover new places.
What new things did you learn from today's show?
From today's show, I learned the meaning of the word Protostar. It is a very young or baby star that has a lot of energy. I also learned that we should always be kind and help others no matter what. That's why I like Rock Talk.
Who do you think should be captain now?
I think Gwen should be captain, as she is a good leader, has special powers, she is smart, and also kind. She does not act like she knows everything, and the team trusts her now.
So this show is teaching children about stellar phenomena with the Protostar and how to use astral navigation to get around a planet.
And last week, she wanted a pig for a pet.
And also, there's another vote for Gwyn as the captain.
That's true. I think the fact that Mahi, who is 6 years old, is really following the show, enjoying the show. She seems to be predicting what's going to happen, even in some cases.
Yeah.
She's prepared for the crew to do the right thing, to do the Starfleet thing. She's in love with Captain Janeway. She refuses to call her hologram Janeway. She'll only call her Captain Janeway. I mean,
awesome.
This is cool. This accidentally, we didn't know if Mahi was going to like this show, but it's really working out for her. And I like the way she's able to think about it. And she's really enjoying it. And this is just like the coolest part of this podcast.
I just think it's great that they managed to find a formula for a Star Trek show that is appealing to really young viewers and getting them into the Star Trek world. And at the same time, complete Star Trek nerds can watch it and go, this is really fun. This is really entertaining.
Yeah, and she's not interested in it because it looked like Star Wars in episode 1. You
Right.
know, that had no impact on her. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and she probably doesn't know Lord of the Rings yet either.
I would imagine she has not seen Lord of the Rings, no. All right, let's move on to our feedback.
Okay.
We'll start with feedback from the Facebook page, which again is facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts. And you can go on there and join that group anytime, and then you can leave your feedback and we will read it here on the podcast.
Yes, so hit the keys, people. So starting with Brian from Colorado, I give S1E5 of Prodigy 9 out of 10 Protostars. My favorite thing about this episode was that the crew, all of them, finally came together. It was heartbreaking that Gwyn's father chose the ship over her, but I was glad because it meant she could finally choose to stand with her new family.
Right.
And it was very rewarding that Dal decided to go back and rescue her from the vines. The biggest no for me in the episode was how or why a Klingon bird of prey was in the Delta Quadrant, and also that Gwen seemed to know all about Klingons, which is what you brought up, Kim.
Exactly.
Also, it didn't make sense that the Klingons would have dead Gar rations, but that was amusing to see nevertheless. Other things that bug me are why they aren't using the transporter, why Janeway didn't know about the Protostar, and why Janeway in this episode could control some of the ship systems, but in prior episodes, she said she couldn't do that.
I believe what they said in the second episode was that she could only have an impact on non-essential systems. And,
Right.
in this episode, she was trying to do something, but it wouldn't let her do anything except turn off the replicators. Although you would think the replicators might be essential as it needs to feed the crew. And then also she was running those windshield wipers. And, she could shut the door in the back. She could open and shut the door.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm the one who complained about continuity problems in this episode. So, yeah, I don't dispute that there's a little bit of that going on.
I think there's reasons for all of that.
Hey, we had our first response from LT from NC. Good morning, Team Prodigy. I wanted to make a special effort to send in some feedback for the mid-season break of the series. I'm excited to see the show as a whole and hope that this is the catalyst for getting new fans into the franchise at a younger age. It's good to see some age-appropriate Trek content out there so that we can show the up-and-coming sci-fi fans that there are more things to see other than clones and droids and Jedi. On that topic, I know several people have commented on how they felt it had a similar feel to that franchise in a galaxy far, far away.
I don't know which one he means.
And to that I say, consider the frame of reference. This Star Trek show isn't primarily made of Starfleet personnel in a direct Federation context, so we don't know what the greater galaxy looks like for the most part past the places we went week to week.
Yeah.
My only real personal complaint is that they began with the same old, tired, young adult trope of the scrappy teens fight back against some oppressive government leader. I went through this with my own kids, starting with Harry Potter, through Percy Jackson, to Hunger Games, and the Divergent series, and Netrunner, and, well, you get the picture. However, since my youngest is now close to drinking age, my progeny are past the point of the primary population of Prodigy. I will say this much, that I have found myself liking the show more as it has progressed because it has grown into an ensemble show from the getting the band together of the premiere.
Yeah.
The part of the show that hooked me the hardest was the animation and the visual effects, the 3D animation, the way the Protostar is rendered, and the fact no one can cut a Starfield backdrop like the current crop of Trek production folks. I have a soft spot for Archer-class scouts of the novels, another smaller Federation starship, and I feel like the Protostar is right in that same size range. Plus, who didn't get a charge seeing the reveal of the secret drive after Zero wondered just what the extra engine was for?
Oh, yeah.
While I understand why they put it on hiatus so as not to overlap Discovery, I will be waiting with anticipation to see the return of Hollow Janeway and the crew of the Protostar.
Absolutely.
We also got a last-minute entry here from Brian, just actually as we were recording. This is Brian from Talk Through Media, and Brian says, I'll give it a 9.25, another experimental drive we never see again.
Oh, I hope not.
I'm glad Dal has turned the corner and that they're all working together as a team. One negative was that the only person that seemed fooled by the planet this week was the Diviner. I would have thought that would have continued. I'll be looking forward to its return, and I still have my money that when Prodigy comes back, Disco will go on hiatus. Speaking of which, Ruthie and I will be back with the Discovery Podcast episode a day or two after this one. All right, thank you, Brian, and LT, and...
Other Brian?
All right, we did get a couple of pieces of audio feedback this week, but there was a fair amount of noise on James and Connor's feedback, so we are just going to read James's rating. This is James the Augmented Sailor.
Well, Connor gave this episode a thumbs up, so that's good. He did also liken the ship to a monster truck, which is another great comparison from Connor. It seems to be his role in this podcast.
Yeah, he's always got something good to bring up.
Yeah, exactly. Well, James gives it a 9.6 Larry the Murder Planets. Which seems like a very good rating. James says, I'd give it higher, but I still feel Dal, even though he was a lot better this week. His snarkiness was still annoying. That's one of the things. He's just not my character. He's the guy that's supposed to be attracting the children. So he's the one my son kind of likes. Now he's more friendly.
Yeah.
It's a good episode prior to the mid-season break, and we finally get to see the proto-warp, and we'll be waiting in the wings for the season to pick back up.
All right, thanks, James and Connor. And we did get one other piece of audio feedback from Jeff, X-Force11.
Hello, Star Trek fans. It's Jeff X-Force11 leaving my feedback about Terra Firma. I love this episode because we got to see the crew really gel for the first time in its entirety, and we got the info on the actual Protostar that is powering the Protostar drive. And man, Voyager would have been really good to have this. They could have gotten back to Earth a lot lot quicker if they had that. And so maybe that's the kind of idea, is to have a ship with this in it so that they can travel back and forth as quickly as it does. I am just so excited about this series and can't wait to see what's next. All right, X-Force is out.
And thank you for that feedback, Jeff. Let's talk a little bit about the Star Trekkiness of this episode. Working together at the end was obviously the key to it being Star Trek-like.
Oh, yeah.
And kind of taking on those roles on the bridge a little bit more.
Yep.
Also, everybody was contributing at the end. I mean, when they went to rescue Gwen, yes, but even when they were on the bridge and Zero figured out what the Protostar was, and Pog has figured out how to engage the warp engines and how to tell when there's a tractor beam. And Gwen figured out how to engage the Protostar engine. So, everybody working together, very Star Trek-y.
Yeah. Oh, I thought it was a fantastic Star Trek episode. You had the trek across the planet, them working together eventually, and when they rescued Gwen, totally Star Trek, and the bridge scene, perfect. That part where they do the scene of the 5 of them on the bridge and the camera pulls back really quick when Gwen engages the Protostar.
Yep.
That was like best of both worlds. Fire.
Yeah.
It totally reminded me of that great scene with Riker.
Yep.
My Star Trekkiness rating on this would be perfect Trek. And I guess the Runaway counted as the red shirt for this episode.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I guess you're right. We also had a Klingon bird of prey. That's pretty Star Trek-y. No Klingons, but still, we did have that ship. No. And we had a little Gach.
And a Makleth.
Yeah, whether or not the rations of Gach made sense.
They probably have dried Gach.
Oh my God. Just add water.
Yes.
Did you have those things when you were growing up where they were like those, you'd get those little things that were like marshmallows and you would pour water on them and then they would grow?
No, we had pot noodle.
Oh, well, I don't think you were supposed to eat these. These are like little toys. And maybe that's what these are like. You just poured water on them and then they grew into worms and then you could eat them.
They're eating Klingon toys.
Okay, let's just move into rating. I feel like we've covered everything multiple times. What is your rating for this episode?
I am giving it a 10 out of 10.
Oh, we've gone back to 10.
Yeah, great episode. I think this hit all the highs. I will forgive it any small continuity errors.
Hey, don't preempt my rating. Stick to your own rating.
Totally enjoyable. Great Trek entertainment, in my opinion.
There were so many things about it I liked. I definitely really liked the ending. I liked them working together. I liked the way that they flew away from the Diviner ship. And he was like, oh, she's gone. How did that happen? I definitely like that part. The look of Dreadnought is very cool, even though it does seem straight out of the Star Wars universe. Yeah. So many things I liked about it. But the continuity errors bug me, and I don't understand why they couldn't pay a little bit more attention to vines, no vines, vines, no vines. That was really bothering me, and it bothered me in the previous episode, and I don't think they corrected it in this one. Yeah. And I gave the last episode a 7, saying I was going to hold out to see if they fixed these continuity errors, and I just don't feel like they did. So I'm going to stick to a 7 with the rating because of that. Oh. To me, of all of the episodes we've seen so far, this was the first time where it felt a little careless to me about that. Yeah. Oh. So I don't know. I'm going to stick with a 7. I don't mean it to sound as complainy as maybe it's sounding, because I really enjoyed it. And I look, I'm not going to stop watching the show. When it comes back in January, I'm going to be there.
Well, that's really good to know.
Okay, so this brings us to the end of season 1, episode 5. I would say come back next week, except we won't be here on this show next week. You can continue to listen to ReBinge Deep Space Nine, but we will be back with Prodigy when it returns in January. Before we wrap up, I want to let you know that James and I can always be reached on RebingeIt@gmail.com and also on Twitter and Instagram @RebingeIt.
And don't forget, you can listen to our DS9 podcast called ReBinge Deep Space Nine, available everywhere you can get your podcasts.
To contact us for Prodigy and even be a part of the show if you'd like, you can join the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts. Don't forget the S at the end. You can also leave audio and written feedback at talkthroughmedia.com/feedback, or you can simply email us at RebingeIt@gmail.com. So lots of ways to get in touch with us if you want to be part of the podcast.
Hit those keys, people.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.